I'll take it. I really wanted Mark to be here tonight. So he's brain's happening right now. I kind of told everybody, so I think it's okay for me to say that much, but that's also. So he really
Aaron?
told me to say something very specifically. I'll probably use less vernacular than he does, but. Despite that, we had broken every other program. Excuse me. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And there'll be a little clock timer that shows you your time counting down.
Good evening. Welcome to the January 25th meeting of the Economic Development and Housing Commission. Tonight's agenda is available on the counter along the wall. A reminder to everyone that requests to speak cards should be completed and turned into the clerk prior to the completion of any staff presentation for that particular item. For those speakers wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this commission, please write the item number on your card, and all speakers will have a 3-minute limit to speak. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and televised for all speakers. So all speakers in order to be recognized must be called on by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful at all times. Would our commission please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have first item of business is swearing in of our new commission members. Polly, are you handling that? Thank
So
you.
if you wouldn't mind all standing up and raising your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Polly Harris. Do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of California. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith. And allegiance to the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of California. That I will take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation. or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Thank you. Be seated.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Let's see, now we move on to the second item on the agenda, which is the election of the chair and vice chair. I think we do the chair first, correct? Correct. Okay. So the chair will entertain nominations for the position of the chair.
I'll make the first nomination. I nominate Michael Brady to continue as the chair.
Okay, that was Ron Price.
I'll second.
And we have a second. Okay. Any others?
I'm in agreement with that. Sure.
Okay, let me, any further discussion? Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. It's like I've been re-elected as chair. Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate the vote of confidence there. Okay, now we will elect the vice chair. And so nominations are open for the vice chair position.
Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Ron Price for vice chair.
Thank you.
Okay, Ron Price has been nominated, and that was a nomination by Matthew Kiesling?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, great.
And I second that.
And we have a second by Peggy Bell. Okay, any other nominations? Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of Ron Price as vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, Ron Price is now our vice chair.
Congratulations.
Great. So now we'll go on to, let's see, welcome. So the, Mr. Lauro, do you have item 3 on the agenda, welcoming statement? Oh, we're in trouble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd prefer using the podium so you can actually see me up here. But first, I wanted to start by welcoming back our returning commissioners. We have 4 here, plus the one, actually 4 total that are back. We have a few new commissioners, including our alternate. But overall, I'm sorry, we have 5 returning, 2 new ones plus an alternate. Sorry about that. But first, I just want to thank everyone for their continued service. I know some of you are already on a commission. Jose came from the Arts Commission. I think Peggy's a new commissioner.
It came from the Disaster Council.
Oh, okay, right. So thank you for that. And Matthew, I think are you new to city commissions? Great. So just wanted to start off by as a resident, as a staff member, we really appreciate the volunteerism our commissions provide. What we try to do with these commissions is provide the council with kind of a first stop for any issues regarding policy or any sort of direction that we want to check in with the people on these commissions that have, whether or not you have expertise in these areas is kind of a bonus, but really it's more having the interest and having the community perspective that we value. And the council has stressed really more than ever before the need to go to the commissions and get that input prior to bringing issues of policy forward to the council. So what I try to do, and hopefully you'll get a taste of that with this presentation tonight, is keep you informed. We don't expect you to be experts on everything, but we at least want you to be informed. So if we bring a matter of policy to you, we want you to have the context to be able to put you in a position to make a good decision. We may not always have a direct recommendation. Sometimes we're just bringing workshop items to get your feedback, and then we'll take that onto the council. But that's mainly how we use our commission is to get that feedback before we take matters forward to the council. So tonight, this is going to be a refresher for those of you that have been on the commission before. But I looked, it had been about a year and a half since we did any kind of orientation with the commission previously, so hopefully it'll be valuable either way. But I wanted to give you an overview of our department, what we do, kind of what the priorities are right now, and then also a little bit more on the commission's role. So I'm going to start with sort of the policy context that drives everything we do in our department. And like I said, talk about your role and give you a flavor of the current projects we're working on. That was the sheet that I handed out. I'll get to that last, but it was supposed to be, long story short, didn't quite work out with my presentation, so it's in print. But I'll actually give Polly a copy of this in a PDF and have it emailed to you after tonight, so you'll have this if you want to refer back to it going forward. So first, I just want to start with the basics. You could Google economic development and probably get dozens of definitions. So the one that I paraphrased here comes from the statewide organization in economic development. Really, it's about creating wealth that provides, that translates to community benefits, growing the local economy, enhancing quality of life. Locally, we kind of boil that down to a concept that we've developed in the last several years around community investment. That's really what we do. We make public investments, just like it says, in different areas, infrastructure, and other economic development activities. And really what it's about is creating an environment in West Sacramento that's ripe for private investment, but also doing it in a way that those public investments bring about other enhancements to people's quality of life. So, and there's also the other bottom line of adding revenue to the city's budget so we can provide those basic services and make our investments translate to additional funds for the general fund. So our staff, we're actually the smallest department in the city, but we're probably per capita the most experienced department in the city, and I really want to stress that. Of the people listed here, I've been with the city for a little over 12 years. I'm not the senior most staff in our department. I think combined between the senior managers, between the 7 of us, I believe we have over 90 years of experience here at the city. And that carries a lot of weight. I mean, West Sac has a culture, a way of doing things that didn't happen overnight, and I really value the staff that we have to keep that going. So it's myself as the director. We have Katie Jacobson and Rick Toft, who aren't here tonight, but they're community investment manager. What Katie does is she sort of manages our capital improvement budget and helps direct those investments and works with the other departments on how we use our discretionary funds that I'll talk about later. Rick, just like it says, he manages the port, but he also does a lot of other things. We're all sort of jacks of all trades in our department because we're small, and you'll meet him eventually. Diane has always been our kind of most seasoned business recruitment person, but she also does a lot of project management. Katie and Raul are here. You'll actually hear from them in a minute about a project they're working on. They both started with the city as interns, which I think is it's really cool, but also it says a lot about how we grow staff here. And they've both been with the city for 10 and 15 years, yeah. So Louise Collis, who's also here tonight, you'll hear from her on the CDBG program. She's been with the city for 15 years. I started with her in the housing department. And then, of course, Polly is kind of keeps it all together in our department, but she also does work for the city manager's office. If you call the main line at the city, it's more than likely Polly's going to pick up. If you visit the 3rd floor, she's going to be the first person to greet you. And then last but not least is Amber, our super intern, who came to us through the STEPS program, the summer STEPS program. And then we actually kept her on as a continuing intern. She's from West Sacramento, is going to UC Davis, and she's, like I said, a really, really talented intern. So that's us. And then the context of what we do can really be captured in a series of planning documents that have all been adopted by the council within the last 5 years, starting with the Community Investment Action Plan. If you've been on the commission long enough, you've heard me talk about that or give a presentation, but really what that's about is what we used to have redevelopment here in West Sacramento, just like all over California. It was the legal authority to do tax increment funding and had all other sorts of powers. The state eliminated that for budgetary reasons and other reasons, and when that happened, our council gave us the mandate to go figure out what we're going to do, and they gave us some direction, but we came up with this plan, it got adopted, and everything we've done since then has been an implementation of the community investment plan. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about originated in that plan. Then these other plans have to do with our other responsibilities. So we have the port in our department. The port in 2013 went through another transition where we sort of flipped it from being focused on trying to make money through cargo, and instead we shifted the focus over to real estate and leased out the cargo facilities. We're doing much better today, as I'll talk about, but that business plan was the precursor to that activity. And then the 4 planning documents that guide a lot of what we do with projects. We had the Bridge District Specific Plan, which doesn't have a nice cover, so I just put up the map. We need to fix that. But the Bridge District Specific Plan obviously is the guiding document for everything that happens in the area around Ridley Field down to the Pioneer Bridge. And then south of there, we currently have the Pioneer Bluff Transition Plan, which we did a presentation of this commission at one point. That document is really about the beginnings of a plan to move Pioneer Bluff, which is the area with the tank farms and our corp yard, and very industrial, but waterfront, to move that from industrial to eventually mixed-use development. The Grand Gateway Master Plan is another area-specific planning document. If you go from Capitol Bowl over to Tower Bridge Gateway, all that vacant property in between, we own it. And this plan is to guide the development of that area. And so there's some work going on with infrastructure around that. We're actually going to amend that plan to make it a more of a document that guides the development. Right now is sort of a vision document, but there's a lot of work going on in that area. And then lastly, the Washington Realized document was one that was done 2015, I think it was adopted. We have a specific plan for that area, which sort of sets the vision and zoning for that whole area, but this document was meant to update that and really look at that neighborhood on a holistic level. So Washington's the area between the Broderick Boat Ramp down to the Tower Bridge, the historic neighborhood. And so that document was really important in that it took a lot of what was done in the specific plan, brought it to a modern level, and kind of set the stage for a lot of investments and a next round of amendments to the specific plan that you'll see eventually when we get to working on that. And then on the housing side, so we also, economic development and housing goes hand in hand, but we have some specific policy documents that kind of guide what we do. The housing element is a part of the general plan, the city's overall plan, and the housing element is really all about making sure that the city has adequately zoned and made possible, not just affordable housing, but housing for all income segments that need to be housed in West Sacramento. So it's kind of a document that looks ahead 10 years, and we have to show that we have adequate sites and zoning, and we've removed enough barriers to allow affordable housing and other housing to be built here. The one in the middle is we're going to hear more about that on the CDBG item later, but the consolidated plan is a 5-year plan that kind of sets the priorities and the needs for how we use our community development block grant funding. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but Louise will do a presentation on the first hearing for that funding source for this year in a little bit. And then finally, the inclusionary housing ordinance, which also doesn't have a cool cover, is the document that it requires development in the city to provide a certain amount of affordable housing. So as the city grows, we're making sure that we have adequate affordable housing to pace the market rate growth. And so we haven't updated that ordinance in a while, but we haven't had a lot of development activity either, but we are planning some changes to that overall program. But for the time being, it's kind of been shifted to raising money for doing new projects, new affordable projects. So in terms of what we do, they're kind of boil it down to 6 different areas. They all are related. We don't do one thing in a vacuum. What we do in our department, because we're so small, but our scope is so large, we have to make sure that everything we're doing is sort of in unison and not stepping on the toes of something else. But really it's about infrastructure investment, planning sites that either we control or that we're prioritizing for redevelopment for their end use. So like I mentioned, we own a lot of property. We own over 600 acres between the city and the port. So a lot of what we do is marrying that infrastructure investment and planning work to the properties that we control to set the stage for private investment. The third one is business recruitment and retention. That's kind of the bread and butter of economic development. If a company wants to locate here, we're here to help them. We're here to help tell them why they should locate here. And then the ones that are already here, we focus on making sure they're happy, everything's working for them here, and if they want to expand, we're the first ones they talk to help them out. So, and then the port, I already kind of covered that in terms of what that entails, but it's a real estate function, more or less. We have, I think, over 20 leases that we have to manage with the port. And the overall fund is, we have about $2 million in revenue from those leases. So it's a business when it comes down to it. It has to make money. And so there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that happens. Affordable housing means a lot of things, but I'll get into that a little bit. And then fund management, we manage in our department different discretionary funds, but the total is almost $10 million in annual revenue that we manage for the city. And all that money goes into these different investments. So I'm going to touch on each one of those briefly. The riverfront areas, if you're not familiar, I kind of already mentioned all of them, but starting from Washington at the north, all the way down to Pioneer Bluff and Stone Lock, these are the areas where we focus like 95% of our attention. The reason for that is not just because, the river is really nice, but it's because that's where the growth's going to occur in the city. That's where the council has signaled back in 1987, this is where we want things to happen. We want people to live there. We want companies to locate there. We want to invest in the infrastructure. And so it's our job to really take that vision and put it into implementation. So whether it's planning work or infrastructure work, mainly that's where it's happening in terms of the work we do. This is the graphic representation of the properties that we control between the port and the city. Like I said, it's over 600 acres. Most of it's concentrated in the center of the city. That's all port-owned property, from the Seaway property, which is on either side of Southport Parkway. If you're heading towards Ridgeway Lakes, the vacant property you go by, that's all port property. Obviously, we own the North Terminal where the cargo facilities are, but we also recently reacquired the Stone Lock property, so that's another 200 acres, kind of at where the barge canal and the river come together. And then going upwards of that, we have the Corp Yard and the old wastewater treatment plant. That's a city facility that we're looking to redevelop. And then there's a scattering of other properties, like the Grand Gateway property near City Hall here that I mentioned, and a few other ones in Washington, Bridge District, and other parts of the city. And this isn't all the city properties. These are the ones that we sort of consider our development sites, our future development sites. So those are the ones we focus on. In terms of business assistance, this gives you an idea. This is a list of what we talk to companies about. What are our competitive advantages? Every city kind of says a lot of the same stuff. For us, we say things that really matter. We have the fastest permitting in the region, and it's not even close. We've documented that we have the ability for companies, whether they're looking here or somewhere else in the Sacramento region, they're going to open first here. And that's our main pitch. We don't throw money at companies. We throw good service and fast processing. A lot of that happens in the community development department, but our staff works closely with them on keeping that reputation true. Other than that, though, we have a great location, and we have a ton of industrial space. We have like 12% of the industrial space in the entire Sacramento region in West Sacramento. So combine that with the freeways and the location of other transportation infrastructure, and it makes us a really good place to do business. But we also have a council that's really progressive, and they get it, and they give us enough latitude to go, go to these companies and make West Sacramento a really attractive place for them to locate. So how we do that, we coordinate with the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. John Kruger from GSEC came here, it was a few months ago, but you heard a long presentation from them on what they do, and they do a lot, but we coordinate with them on any company that's looking to locate in Sacramento and is talking to them. We're at the table. Our Chamber of Commerce, our local Chamber of Commerce, some of you are actually involved in the Chamber, so you understand that relationship. It's really important between the city and the Chamber. What they do is they talk to existing businesses, so we have a relationship with them, actually through a contract, where they do business retention activities for us. They do business outreach through all their activities, and when a company has something they want to talk to us about, oftentimes that's how that conversation starts, is through the Chamber. And then at the state level, GoBiz is the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, and we work with them when they put out requests for information we're talking like big recruitments. We respond to those RFIs and work with GoBiz on that. So there's a lot that goes into that, but a lot of the success you see in West Sacramento, I credit Diane Richards, who's been doing this for 10 plus years or almost 15 years. And she really is an expert statewide on business recruitment. So we're really well positioned at the staff level and just in general with our location and everything else I talked about in that category. So the port, like I mentioned, we lease out the port. The red area on this slide shows the area that SSA Pacific leases, and they do all the shipping, so all the cargo ships you see coming in, they're using those warehouses and those facilities. All we do is we collect a rent payment now. We used to actually run the port, and didn't work so well. It was losing lots of money, and SSA was able to streamline things, and we were able to reduce a lot of costs in the process. And so the blue area is what we lease out to non-maritime activity, but that's where we make the bulk of our money, is on those non-maritime leased areas. And then on affordable housing, that's a big category also. We have programs, we have projects. On the project side, our role is we're a lender. So when a project gets built in West Sacramento, like Rivermark on the bottom, or West Gateway Place, which is about to open down the street, they go out and get all their funding, and then there's always a gap. That's just how affordable housing works. And we provide that gap money, and we take back a loan, a note, and a long-term affordability restriction, and that's how we create affordable housing. That's the main function for creating affordable housing. So we do a lot of that. There's over 1,700 units, so over 10% of the units in the city are regulated affordable units that have come about because of that sort of process. But then we also have affordable home ownership units. We have the first-time homebuyer program that gives down payment assistance to people who are looking to buy their first home if they're low income. And we've done upwards of over 100 probably loans over the course of time. The inclusionary housing program, similarly, that's the program where if a developer builds, a certain percentage of the homes have to be affordable. So there's a lot of ownership units in the city that are the result of that program. And then to make sure all that's in compliance and they stay affordable, what Raul does really on his own is he has to go out from time to time and monitor those developments, and to make sure the homeowners that are supposed to be living in the homes aren't renting them out, that sort of thing. So monitoring is often overlooked in cities, but it's really essential to maintaining that affordable housing stock. And then, fund management is my favorite thing, just because you can't do anything if you don't know where the money's coming from. You don't have a good plan for where it's going. And like I said, we manage over upwards of $10 million a year in discretionary funding that ultimately the council has the decision on how they budget for it, because it is discretionary. But what we do is try to keep the funds healthy and make sure that we're recommending the right places to put money. So starting with the Community Investment Fund, long story short, that's the money that the city gets back from the old redevelopment agency, which took all the property tax, and then when it got dissolved, all that money got sent to the school district and the other property tax entities. We're one of those. And so the council had the wisdom to look ahead and say, we want to take that money and keep investing it in the city. If you remember Measure G back in 2012, it passed. It was an advisory measure. It passed by 87%. And basically what it says is, should we take that money and continue to put it into infrastructure investment? So that's what that fund is. It's about $5.4 million a year, and it pays for a lot of different things, but that's really what keeps that investment going, and it's able to leverage grant funds to do projects like the McGowan Bridge, Village Parkway. The list just goes on, but without that fund, we wouldn't be doing nearly the number of infrastructure projects and other activities that we have going on in the city. And then the other ones, I don't want to get into the full detail, but the EIFD, if you've been on the commission, you've heard about that. It will be back for more discussion, but essentially what that is, it gives us a way to borrow against the property tax stream that we get. And so that'll come into play later on when we look to do bigger scale projects. And I'll do a separate presentation, another meeting on that program. Similarly, the Bridge District Fund and the Bridge District IFD, it's a similar construct, but just within the area of the Bridge District. So it has its own financing plan. And right now, both of those funds, they're spinning off just a small amount of money, but that grows over time with the property tax increase. And so that fund is how we'll pay for parking garages, parks, other eventual improvements in the Bridge District. The port, I already mentioned, revenue is about $2.2 million a year. Last year we made close to $1 million at the port. We're not projecting quite that high going forward because a lot of that was one-time revenue, but the point is the port is doing well, and it's stable as opposed to where it was 5 years ago. The Housing Trust Fund, that's the money we receive from when developers build new housing. They pay it through the inclusionary housing program, and then we take that money and we invest it into, like I said, gap financing for affordable projects and home ownership programs. And then finally, again, another topic for later tonight, the Community Development Block Grant. We just received this year the transition to move from the old state program where we had to apply to the state because we got large enough population. We hit 50,000, and that transitioned us to the federal program. So we get a direct funding allocation from the federal government now, which is beautiful because we don't have to deal with the state on CDBG anymore. And like Louise will talk about what we can use that money for, it's a number of different activities that benefit low-income residents and low-income areas of the city. So that's kind of, it's a lot on what we do. So that's, like I said, I'm gonna send you this presentation so you can review it after tonight. But in terms of what we ask of you, this is straight off our website, which is defined by the council in terms of the scope of the commission. It's really about matters of policy. So if we're going to make a change to that inclusionary housing program, or we're going to propose some new program, we're going to come to you first. We're going to ask you, here's what we're thinking, what do you think? We want that policy feedback, just kind of gut reaction on does that sound good, or would you do something different? Like I said, we don't expect you to become overnight experts in this stuff. Really, it's a check-in with the people in the community that are really interested in this area, and then we take that forward to the council. And in terms of the areas, I would define this scope much broader, but these are the activities that are listed on your official, here's what your purview is. So, yeah, so it's a fairly large scope because you have both economic development and housing, but like I said, we'll continue to bring you items even if we're not necessarily asking for action. We want you to be informed. So when we do come forward to ask for something, you'll have some kind of background on it. So that's my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
A lot of information. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, looks like Mr. Laurel, thank you very much.
All right. And so now I'm going to turn it over to, speaking of the projects on this list, which I forgot to get to, this list is sort of a summary of our current work plan. It has a list of all, whether it's infrastructure projects or programs. This is mainly what we're working on between all of us. And on this list, the projects that are listed first that are in bold are ones that appear on the council's strategic plan for this year. So obviously we do a lot more than that, and a lot of those projects emanate from previous council strategic plans. But one of them in particular that's on here is the Grand Casey Street Extension Project. It's about midway down. And this is a project that is a future implementation phase of the Bridge District, creating a better connection from the downtown area into the Bridge District, and in doing so, creating additional transportation capacity for a future phase of an affordable housing project. So West Gateway Place is the one that's under construction right now. It's almost done. Between Katie and Raul, Katie started the project. Well, she's also finishing it. But then she's turning it over to Raul, who's going to work on the second phase. But they're both sort of co-managing the infrastructure side of the project. Raul eventually will take over the whole thing, but they wanted to do a check-in tonight because the project is moving forward. We're in design, so we wanted to give you a little bit of scope about it and get your feedback. So this is sort of the thing that we'll be bringing to you. It's a good representation of that. So I'll turn it over to Katie and Raul. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron, before you guys get started, Aaron, are the projects on this list the projects you anticipate will be coming to the commission this year?
Not necessarily. Some of them will have matters of policy that we'll need to bring forward. Others are far enough along where we don't need further direction. But just for example, the second one on the list, the Pioneer Bluff Stone Lock redevelopment, that's a long-term planning project that Katie's also managing. No doubt there will be items that we bring forward to this commission this year on that project, but some of these other ones are smaller infrastructure projects that already have full funding and they're already in design. So it's kind of a mixed bag there. Yeah.
Good evening, Commissioners. Welcome back for those of you that are have been on our commission before, and then welcome to the new members. It's nice to see a full commission. We always like to do our presentations to eager, faces who have made the time to come out of their evening and spend some time with us. As a resident too, I do appreciate seeing you guys volunteer your time, so thank you so much. It feels like that's very loud. Apologies. This evening, as Aaron mentioned, there are a lot of projects that our department, works on. One of the areas that we spend a lot of time in is in the Bridge District. And the Casey Grand project is an implementation activity of the Bridge District specific plan. And so I thought I would take the opportunity to sort of acquaint the commissioners and reacquaint the old commissioners with sort of what the Bridge District specific plan is and why we're involved in this project. So the Bridge District specific plan was adopted in 2009. It's about 180 acres of riverfront development area. It was funded in part by a Proposition 1C grant for about $23 million. We received a grant from the state to do some infrastructure work, which we referred to as the 2014 plan. That was the construction of new roads, municipal utilities, some interim park improvements, and we're obligated to construct 731 units, of which a portion of those had to be affordable. The project that Aaron referred to, West Gateway Place, which is getting ready to open up in the next couple of weeks, is one of those Prop 1C obligated projects, and that's located at the corner of Grand Street and Tower Bridge Gateway. And so it's at the most sort of northwest portion of the Bridge District that is sort of visible from the Civic Center area on West Capitol Avenue. That project had a lot of challenges that were attached to it, which included what to do with that old Delta Lane, Risky Lane road that sort of is a remnant of the old street network that includes a at-grade old Union Pacific Railroad crossing. Part of what the Bridge District specific plan was focused on was how to engage in these deindustrialization activities, and that's part of the reason why we're in front of you this evening, is that as business retention and relocation are part of this commission's policy objectives, what we wanted to daylight for this commission is that we have this commitment to doing deindustrialization on the waterfront. Those areas in blue that Aaron referenced, Washington, the Bridge District, Pioneer Bluff, and Stone Lock, all have active rail lines that affect them. And one of the missions that we are committed to through the specific plan is looking at railroad relocation. So there's two components of that. There is the line that feeds the port that comes off of the main line, and then there's a UP switching yard. And both of those activities impede the future street grid that you see in front of you. And so we are working actively towards putting together a solution so that we don't run into an issue in the Bridge District where we're constrained by those industrial uses in order to get our full development, but at the same time figuring out what does that mean in relationship to the port and those rail users. And so that's sort of where your policy considerations come in. And the item on tonight's topic, which is a quiet zone application related to this new railroad crossing, fits into this endeavor that we have to continue to deindustrialize the Bridge District. The next phase of the Bridge District infrastructure project is this Casey Grand connection, and what it requires is a construction of a new crossing. And this new crossing would be about 150 feet sort of southwest of the existing crossing. Raul's going to walk you through sort of the technical aspects of the project and why it's necessary to complete our Prop 1C obligations and its relationship between this new crossing, the construction of Casey Grand, and the construction of the second phase of West Gateway Place. But I think the challenges that you'll see in front of you many times as we return, I want to sort of leave you with this, is that we're often trying to balance what do we do with our industrial heritage in these areas, how do we support those industrial users, and then how do we transition and move forward into these new activities that are sort of envisioned in the general plan. And so in that end, we have like Robinson Trucking, for example, which is an old industrial user just south of the West Gateway Place. It's a trucking facility. The new road will be going through that facility. That's a non-conforming use, and the new road will be going through that facility. So those kinds of issues, balancing the business retention activities, business relocation activities with implementing the general plan vision, are something you're going to be hearing a lot from staff as they come forward to you. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Raul, who will talk about the project and a little bit about the pending applications that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome again. So as Katie mentioned, a lot of tasks need to happen before the project can move forward. What I have up on the slide is the original design, the initial design for the extension of Grand Street and the construction of Casey Street. As Katie mentioned, in order for Casey to be completed, the existing railroad crossing needs to be realigned and a new crossing built. This is quite an endeavor as it involves Union Pacific Railroad and Sierra Northern Railroad and a lot of the private property owners in the area. On December 1st, we held a diagnostic meeting with Union Pacific Railroad, Public Utilities Commission to discuss this initial design and whether they would generally be in approval to moving forward. The general consensus was that this plan is significantly better than trying to do improvements to the existing Delta Lane and the existing crossing. The existing crossing is less than optimal. There's a significant grade change from Delta Lane to Fifth Street, which makes it very dangerous and complicated for pedestrians, vehicular, and especially with West Gateway Place, Phase 1 being completed this month, and the future West Gateway Place 2, those troubles would be increased with more vehicular traffic, pedestrian and bicycle traffic. So on January 18th, we received council approval to move forward with the project. We got a green light per se from Union Pacific and Public Utilities Commission to continue with the design of the project. There are many tasks that still need to be completed, including geotechnical studies, obviously more additional design drawings, and ultimately the application to the Public Utilities Commission for the new crossing. One of the aspects that the council requested that we obtain comments from the commission was an application to establish the new crossing as a quiet zone. Like Katie mentioned, the Bridge District is transitioning from an industrial zone to a more residential. So it seemed logical for us to pursue the new crossing as a quiet zone to enhance, obviously, the quality of life of the residents. Establishing that crossing as a quiet zone will not completely eliminate the use of the horns, the train horns, but it would significantly reduce them. There's going to be a lot of coordination with Public Utilities Commission, Union Pacific Railroad, Sierra Northern Railroad, and the Federal Railroad Administration. So our question to you tonight was whether you thought we should be moving forward with implementation of a quiet zone and directing our consultant to look into ways of making sure that this happens and continuing the coordination with Public Utilities Commission and Union Pacific Railroad as we go along with the project. There would be a formal application that would have to be submitted to the Public Utilities Commission and likely to the Federal Railroad Administration. So it seemed again logical to coordinate this effort along with the efforts for the new crossing and the project as a whole. These are just some of the examples based on the information that I was able to obtain from the Federal Railroad Administration as supplementary safety measures that could be used so that the quiet zone application could be approved. And using these supplementary safety measures will allow for increased safety of the crossing without significant use of the train horns. Again, whether these specific ones get implemented will depend on what is discussed with Sierra Northern, Union Pacific, and Public Utilities Commission. But again, these were examples of safety measures that are typically used for establishing quiet zones.
So a real quick question, there hasn't been any feedback from the railroad companies yet, like?
Not initially, no.
Okay.
Our December 1st diagnostic meeting centered primarily on establishment of that new railroad crossing. The quiet zone came after the fact. So we have yet to even discuss this with the railroad and the Public Utilities Commission. But again, it seemed like a logical step to do if we are going to be moving forward.
And I think but back to the comment that I made about balancing these business considerations is that we did hear at the diagnostic meeting that Union Pacific expressed some concerns about the effects it would have on operations. So just the project itself would affect Union Pacific's operations. This additional quiet zone application would also likely affect their operations. And so those are some of those balancing considerations that we're bringing in front of this commission.
I mean, my initial thought is, yeah, it does definitely make sense to move forward as long as safety is a big issue, you know, for the railroad. So if you can go back to that previous page real quick, where you had all the safety, can you go back real quick? Yeah. So all these are common ways of providing safety when there are those railroad crossings. Okay, so that makes sense.
Correct. And again, there may be more, and as we move forward and have our meetings with Public Utilities Commission and Union Pacific Railroad, they may provide some additional safety measures that they would like to see implemented aside from these. Again, this is definitely not the complete list.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Any other, yes, go ahead.
Raul, interested in knowing with your proposed design, will the quiet zone cause that to be amended?
We would have to implement whatever safety measures are ultimately approved and discussed. So yes, there is a possibility that those designs would have to be altered in some way. The design is only at 10%. And again, this is why we thought it would be a good place to begin this process, so that as we move forward with additional designs, any safety measures that would have to be incorporated into those new designs would be done at this time, so that we don't do it when we are at 65 or 75 or 90% design.
That makes sense.
So I'm curious, the UP line that runs across Jefferson into the port, is that a quiet zone? Is that defined?
Yes, I believe the crossing at Jefferson Boulevard is a quiet zone.
So the gate alignment and construction would be probably similar?
I believe
There is a
that it's a
possibility,
quiet
yes.
zone at Stone, correct?
It's Stone and Jefferson, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not necessarily at 15th.
Correct.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Price?
I live in the Iron Works, which is close by to where this is going to take place, and a former member of the Homeowners Association. So there's been a lot of discussion in the neighborhood about the noise from the trains, and this would definitely be a positive step in the neighborhood to have a quiet zone. UP goes through there in the middle of the night, not as frequently as it used to. I was the first one to move in there. They've quieted down, but the HOA and the neighbors would be definitely in favor of this, so thanks for the presentation.
Yes.
Two quick questions. The first one I think is for Katie. You mentioned that the at-grade crossing, the new crossing itself, will impact UP's operations, and you said likely the quiet zone would impact our operations as well. Can you elaborate on that, and just what would be potential detrimental impacts to UP's operations as a result of this?
It would be my pleasure to do that. They haven't told us yet. They just told us that it would likely do that. Part of what we received authority at the last council meeting was to engage in those kinds of discussions. What they said at the diagnostic meeting, what Union Pacific said at the diagnostic meeting was You will need to engage with our operations people. Our operations people have looked at your preliminary designs. They're telling us that it will affect operations, but he did not describe what those operations will look like. And so part of what we have to do is work with Kimley Hornis, who are a consultant that we've hired to do this work, to put together an operations analysis to present our evidence as to what we think will happen, and then Union Pacific presents that evidence. I think the bottom line here is that we can't proceed without Union Pacific's consent. Not only do we need them to support the CPUC application as well as the quiet zone application, we need right-of-way from Union Pacific. We are crossing part of their yard. They need to consent to the relocation of the new switch to south of where it exists now. And so we are a bit at Union Pacific's mercy in relationship to when they tell us it affects their operations. We assume they're telling us that it does. We don't have the actual details that I think you're asking me for at this time.
Well, as someone who's worked with UP before, I think you'll find that anytime you're asking them to do something different than what they're currently doing, it impacts their operation in some sort of way. And there's truth to that. They've been operating there for a long time, and they have a way in which they do things. And when situations change and they have to change in response to that, it does have an impact. I'd say, however, the general plan is pretty clear of what the vision is for this district. The crossing looks like a great idea, and I would support, if we're going to be bringing residences next to this crossing, a quiet zone seems to make a lot of sense for the benefit of both those residences and for the future vision of what the city sees.
Thank you. Yes.
Just follow-up
Campbell?
question to Commissioner Kiesling's line. The cost for this, is there cost sharing? Is the city contributing towards the relocation? Is that a leverage point?
The cost for the project will be borne by the city, and not just local city funds, but we are looking into grant applications for the entire project. And there will be property acquisition costs from Union Pacific Railroad, from Robinson Trucking, the River Cats perhaps, but it will be borne by the city, local funds, and grant funds primarily.
I would also add that it will be borne by the property owners in the Bridge District. The property owners in the Bridge District assess themselves through a CFD. This is one of those improvements that's identified in that CFD. So the burden of this project is being borne by all of those property owners because they assess themselves in an attempt to sort of support the entire Bridge District specific plan build out. So this is a component of that project.
Thank you, Commissioner Campbell. I have a, first of all, Raul, I appreciate you bringing this to the commission so early, and it's good to see that the circulation in that area will be cleaned up, be straightened out a little bit. The also concern I have is the current owners on the newly divided land and ingress egress related to Casey Street, and taking a look at the kind of a master plan of that. That would be a good thing to let the property owners know along the way there.
Correct. So we have tried to keep all of the affected property owners up to date on our progress with the design of the extension of Grand and Casey. And you're right, that's going to be part of the design, making sure that whatever property owners are affected are given access to their properties. In many ways, construction of Casey Street will improve properties, specifically Robinson Trucking comes to mind. But that will be part of the design as we move along with the project. And obviously, we will have to acquire property, acquire right-of-ways from different property owners, and we will have to keep them up to date on the progress and get their approvals, because we will need their full cooperation for the project to go forward.
Commissioner Price?
Is there a preliminary schedule for this project?
We hope to have all of the tasks completed to be able to submit the application to the Public Utilities Commission around the end of May. That all depends on how fast Union Pacific moves, and Union Pacific moves, they march through their own drumbeat, so we are really our hands are tied, and it really depends on how responsive they will be, but that is the schedule that we have in mind, at least for the submission of the public utilities application for the new crossing.
So you'd have a preliminary design at that point?
Correct. So we will have approximately 65% design drawings at that point, which is what the Public Utility Commission requires for the application, along with some of the other studies that have to be submitted.
And along with that, a preliminary budget?
We should have some estimate of a budget. However, part of the tasks that our consultant will be doing, if the Public Utilities Commission approves that new crossing, is full construction estimates for the entire project. But that will not happen until we have a green light from Union Pacific Railroad and Public Utilities Commission for the construction of that railroad crossing.
If I may add to, at 65% construction drawings is typically when we would do formal outreach to the property owners to begin to negotiate real property acquisitions. And so at that point, when we have submitted the application and we're waiting for approval, and we have 65% construction drawings, that's typically when we would initiate sort of a formal negotiation with the property owners who are affected to acquire the property rights that are necessary. So the outreach that Raul mentioned has been more informal in nature, but we would sort of get a little bit farther along in the design so that we would know exactly what those acquisition areas would be, exactly what we would need to construct, what would be the resulting elevations. So those issues that Commissioner Brady brought up about ingress and egress could be discussed. We would be far enough along in the design work that we could have meaningful conversations with the property owners, but we would not have completed design. So somewhere between 30 and 65% engineering work is when those conversations typically formally start occurring.
And then just on the back end of that, the financing schedule for this project is, as Raul mentioned, is dependent on applying for grant funds. There's a potential source we're looking at for later this summer, maybe a little ambitious to get there, but the one that we're targeting for sure is through Sacramento Area Council of Governments has their, used to be biannual funding cycles, now it's delayed a year, but they have a program that funds infrastructure improvements like this, and we'd be looking to the summer of 2018 at the back end to apply for that grant. So we're trying to tee up all the design work and all the property rights, so we are in good position to apply for that funding.
Thank you.
Raul, the other concern that might be in play here is the, as you mentioned on your list was the geotechnical reporting and survey. So we have, at that point, looking at any brownfield conditions from the historic nature there, and if there's an AIR or environmental assessment that's required, that'd be a part of the reporting as well.
If it's all right, I'm going to answer that question, Commissioner Brady. So the environmental document that covers the construction of this project is the supplemental EIR for the Bridge District Specific Plan. When we took the action to the council just last week, it also included an addendum to cover the construction of the new crossing, which was not included in the specific plan EIR. So our CEQA, for all intents and purposes, is complete. And as far as the environmental assessment, doing phase ones is included in the work that has been commissioned by Kimley Horn. And we do have some other assessment work that's been done historically in the past that was done in relationship to the West Gateway Place project. And so we feel pretty confident that we have a good handle on what the environmental condition is out there. And we'll continue to do some additional work to ensure that we have that underway. But the CEQA has been completed.
All right, thank you. And then I think it would be of interest for the commission to have some monitoring, some milestone of reporting back to us.
We can certainly do that. As we move along with the project, if the commission desires, we can come back and update on the progress of the project and where we are.
You know, and as you know, thank you for that. And as you know, the environmental concerns to mitigate those is very important, because we don't want any surprises as you get, you know, beyond 65% completion of design. So, any other comments from the commission?
So just for my clarification, so Katie and Raul, I think you both said we're at the mercy of the railroad. So there is no, like, deadline for this, right? So we'll just move along and get to cooperation and move the project along. So there is no, is there like a must get this done by date?
So obviously, we have, we're looking into grant funding for the project. So those grant funds have deadlines, as Aaron pointed out. One of them is going to be this summer. We may not be at the point where we can submit an application for that grant fund, but there are others that we're going to be looking at. The other deadline per se will be the completion or start of construction of Phase 2 of West Gateway Place. Again, as we increase the number of residents in that area, the safety of them is going to be obviously a concern.
Right.
So we will want this project to be completed or near completion when that happens.
The deadline for Proposition 1C is that we have to have a certificate of occupancy by December of 2021 for Phase 2. So we have some time to be strategic in our discussions with Union Pacific. Not a lot of time, but we have some time.
Great, thank you.
All right, anything else from the commission? All right, one other thought is, what is the existing right-of-way for the railroad through there? In width?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
The existing right-of-way dimension for that, to access, railroad access?
The existing right-of-way?
Yeah, railroad right-of-way.
Are you referring to Delta Lane? What's the existing right-of-way of Delta Lane for the existing crossing? Or
Oh, well,
You're
the
talking about the railroad
railroad's
right-of-way.
right-of-way.
There's an extensive yard there with a number of different tracks. So it's,
It
All
varies.
within- all
It's
within
very,
their purview.
it's variable, yeah. But
Okay, all right.
yeah.
The drawings we have so far are not as detailed to be able to pick that up, but thank you for the clarification. All right. Mr. Laurel, do you have enough information from the commission at this point to,
Yes, thank you. Thank you for all the questions, and thank you to Raul and Katie.
all right, very good. We'll move on to general administration function here, part 1 of our agenda. Presentations, this is general information here, presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the commission will be accordingly. The commission is prohibited from discussing issues not on the agenda brought to them at this time. According to state law, the Brown Act, items must first be noticed on the agenda before any discussion or action can be taken. And then I'd like to consider approval of the meeting minutes from the November 9th commission meeting. Do I have a recommendation?
Yes, I motion that,
motion?
this is Jose Altamirano, I motion that we approve the minutes of November 9th of the Economic Development and Housing Commission.
Okay, do I have a second?
second, Ron Price.
Thank you.
Mr.
Any
Chair?
discuss- Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to back up on number 5. I think everyone's here for the CDBG item, but if we could just make sure that there weren't any people here to address number 5. Okay, just wanted to close that loop.
Okay, great,
Thanks.
thank you, thank you. Okay, any discussion on a meeting, any clarifications or modifications to the meeting minutes? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So the meeting minutes are approved from the November 9th, 2016 commission meeting. Going on to item 7, consideration for resolution 17-01, setting the time and date for economic development and housing commission meetings for 2017. So in your packet, you have the outlined commission meetings for March, May, July, September, and November. Do I have any discussion on that? Or I'll entertain a motion?
The only potential challenge I saw was with November 22nd. I think that's the day before Thanksgiving. So hopefully, many of us are available that week.
That has been an issue in the past.
If that is the case, we'll look to see if it is that date. That's one we would definitely look to move. Sometimes we do that. We'll look ahead and say, most people probably aren't going to be there, so we'll either cancel the meeting or move to a different date.
Okay,
So
Thank you.
we'll verify that date, though.
great.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, so the proposed meeting agenda or meeting schedule, if that's, would I entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposed meeting schedule for future Economic Development and Housing Commission meetings.
And that's Mr. Commissioner Price. Is there a second?
I second that.
That's Commissioner Bell for a second. Okay, so any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's accepted as well.
Chair,
Yes.
just for the record, I'd like to note that I'm abstaining from item 6 on the minutes.
Oh,
I
because you
wasn't-
weren't here.
I wasn't here, so.
Okay, very good. And that would be for Commissioner Bell as well, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so we have 2 abstentions from, on item 6, that will be noted into our notes here by Commissioner Kiesling and Commissioner Bell. And that would go for Commissioner Moreno as well, right?
Well, I reviewed the meetings, not that they were fine, but, yeah.
Chairman,
And that's getting into a quorum issue,
you
right?
can actually vote on the minutes even though you weren't there. You can approve the minutes even though you weren't there.
Okay.
Just because you are new to the commission doesn't mean that you can't approve the minutes even though they weren't there.
Okay,
So if
so
you want to
we'll-
rescind your
We'll-
abstentions, you can, because otherwise the motion does not pass. Your abstentions mean that you didn't vote and we don't have a quorum.
Right. Okay, we
Happily rescind the abstention.
Likewise.
Well, good, thank you, and I appreciate that clarification, Polly, and now we have a quorum for that item 6, so we can move forward.
Commissioner Altamirano, did you also rescind your abstention?
I didn't abstain, I said,
Okay,
He was just
Right.
commenting on.
okay,
on
thank
the-
you.
On the fact that he did like the meeting minutes.
yes.
Okay, so we're now moving into a public hearing, and this would be for item 8. And so let me preface that item with these comments. So the public hearing for the Community Development Block Grant availability of funds for 2017 and 2018 is now open. The purpose of this hearing is for the commission to hear and consider pertinent facts and to take action relating to the commission, to the CDBG funds for 2017 and 18. All persons wishing to be heard shall have filled out a comment card and given it to the commission secretary, right over here, Polly. Okay, and then if you have not done so, please do so now. So right now I have 4 requests to speak forms. Okay,
Yeah, we'll
everyone-
go ahead and have Louise do the presentation, and then we'll move to public comment at that time for the public hearing.
Yes, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Okay. Everyone will be given an opportunity to be heard, and any individual making comments shall first be given his or her name. So please speak slowly and clearly. This is required because the official recorded transcript of the hearing is being made. If anyone requires special accommodation in order to speak, please let the clerk know, and she will make the arrangements for you. Each person be given an opportunity to address the commission for 3 minutes. And there is a timing on this, Aaron?
Yes, we have a timer we can turn on up here.
Okay, and so
Yeah.
would Polly be monitoring that?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so now we have a staff presentation. Ms. Collis will make that presentation for us.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your presentation there.
No problem.
Good evening, Commissioners and community members. I'm very excited to see that we have some community participation here tonight. CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant. This is HUD funding, federal HUD funding, that is allocated to jurisdictions to improve the lives and our low-income residents and to improve opportunities in low-income neighborhoods. In the past, since we've been an incorporated city, we've been under the federal CDBG Small Cities Program, which means that the feds allocate funding to the state of California, and then we apply to the state for our funding. We have one final state grant that we're finishing out that will expire this coming October. And starting last July, we came under the federal entitlement program. It's called being an entitlement city, which means we're entitled to get our allocation every year, provided we follow all of HUD's rules and regulations, of which there are many. But the nice thing about being an entitlement city is we can plan in advance, and that's why, and HUD actually requires that. We're required to create a 5-year consolidated plan saying, we have taken an analysis, we've taken public comment, we've looked at the needs in our community, and here's where we're going to target our CDBG funds over the next 5 years to address those. And you'll notice it's not called a 5-year CDBG plan, it's called a 5-year consolidated plan, because we're supposed to look at far more needs than we could ever fund with our small little amount of money. But where does that money fit best within those needs? Coupled with other resources, or where can we go and find resources if we just don't have enough? And so that's what the consolidated plan process did last year. We did a number of stakeholder meetings, we did a number of public meetings, we met with community groups, we met with individuals, and developed the consolidated plan. So now we had, in our first year of the consolidated plan, we put our funding into the Washington neighborhood. Polly, if you could put that map up now. This is the one you saw from Aaron Laurel's presentation. The Washington district is one of the lower income areas of the city, and there's been decades and decades of disinvestment in that area. Vacant lots, vacant buildings, very little economic activity. But as you can see from the map, it's right across the Tower Bridge and right across the I Street Bridge from downtown Sacramento, and especially the I Street Bridge from all of the activity with the new arena and the rail yards and all that. So this is the neighborhood that's primed for high-density infill development, and in the city's new general plan that was adopted in December, that's where that area is now, well, the zoning is underway, but in the general plan, it's set up for high-density infill development. The Washington Renaissance Plan, which was also one of the plans that Aaron talked about when we did a study to see what infrastructure would be needed to support that kind of infill development, we also looked at what I call the soft, that's the hard infrastructure, and then I have what I call the soft infrastructure. How do you serve the people that are living there? Because it's a low-income neighborhood. How do we make sure that the people that are living there now, we reduce possible displacement, economic displacement, as property values rise, as rents rise, and how we help people earn better salaries and become able to take advantage of those economic opportunities that we hope to see in that district. So that's what the Washington Renaissance Plan looks primarily at the infrastructure, but there's also an important key piece that talks about affordable housing, economic opportunities for very low-income persons, things like English as a second language class, GED classes, entry-level jobs with ladders to better jobs. So there's a plan for that. And that's also part of the Washington Renaissance Plan. So there are four overarching goals in the consolidated plan. The first one is to reduce the incidence and impact of homelessness. And a lot of that is based on a study the city did in 2013, which was also funded by state CDBG funds, and our homeless action plan. That was an 18-month plan. It was a shorter-term plan, but it got the ball rolling of the city addressing homelessness. And from that study, we've still got a lot of information from that study that carries over. The second goal is to continue with the Washington Realized strategy, and our first year's money went towards that goal. So we're working on a section of the riverfront, the riverfront trail, the River Walk Trail, that goes from the I Street Bridge up to the boat ramp. That section of the trail is not ADA accessible. It's just gravel. It is not lit. So people that are riding their bikes or walking, to get through to the neighborhood or going across the I Street Bridge, if you're riding your bike to work at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning in the wintertime, you're riding in the dark. And if you're coming home at 5 or 6 in the evening, you're coming home in the dark. So we want to put in a paved pathway. We want to put in secure safety lighting and make it ADA accessible. So that's where this year's money is in Goal 2. Goal 3 is to strengthen economic opportunities for lower income households. Primarily right now what we're doing is our micro enterprise program. So I think in February we're starting another round of classes. So we do classes for low income persons that are wanting to start their own small business. They go through 6 weeks of classes, developing a business plan, and we pay for the classes for one-on-one business counseling. And if they need it at the end of that and they develop an acceptable business plan, they are also eligible for up to a $5,000 grant. It's a 3-to-1 match, so they come up with $1, we can give them up to $3 towards their business creation or business expansion. And the final goal is affirmatively furthering fair housing, which is a very difficult phrase to say, but it's a very important thing to understand. This is a HUD mandate for cities that receive CDBG funds. It means that we don't just provide fair housing counseling or fair housing classes. It means that we affirmatively take action to improve housing choice for persons from all protected classes: race, religion, ethnicity, familial status, gender, sexual preference, and all of those, to make sure that everyone has access to quality housing, and not just quality housing, but can find that housing in areas where they can find the schools where they want to send their children, or near their job so they don't have to drive a long way. When you're wanting to reduce traffic, when you're wanting to cut down on air pollution, people need to either be close to their job or within a comfortable transit ride from their job. So how can we put people where jobs are? And how can low-income people find affordable housing in those places? That's a very difficult question. So those are the 4 goals in our first 5-year plan. They're pretty high range. I think they're pretty high level goals. These are things that will make an impact, but they're going to be not going to be easy, but we're really working towards that. The public hearing this evening is, what are we going to do within that framework of that 5-year plan? What are we going to do with this year's money coming July 1st of 2017? So we do not have our allocation amount yet from HUD, but at this point, we're going on the assumption it'll be similar to last year, which was $429,000. 20% of that goes to general admin and consolidated planning, the annual action plan that we're working on now. We also this year have to do an AFH, analysis of fair housing, which has to do with affirmatively furthering fair housing. We're working on a kind of a mini one for now, but we will be working on a regional fair housing plan with all the jurisdictions in, all the CDBG jurisdictions in Yolo County, Sacramento City and County, and Roseville and Placer County, I believe. No, Placer County's not under the federal program. I guess just Roseville. So it's Woodland, Davis, West Sac, Sacramento City, Sacramento County, Citrus Heights, and the housing authorities serving those. So there's Roseville Housing Authority, Sacramento Housing Authority, and Yolo County Housing Authority. So that's going to be quite an undertaking. And you'll be hearing more about that as we work on it. We just signed an MOU between all those jurisdictions to embark on this effort. CDBG funds have to address one of the 3 CDBG national objectives. The primary objective is to help low-income families. And the very last page of your packet shows what the HUD definition of that is. So if it's families that are under that bottom line, the low income, we usually kind of focus on those that are at the below that, so at the very low or extremely low income limits. And the project that Roel and Katie are working on, West Gateway Place 1, which is due to open here in a few weeks, and hopefully West Gateway 2 in a year or two, they have units West Gateway 1 has extremely low income units, which are rare. Those are hard to fund because it takes a lot of money. So I think we have 12 extremely low income units. So you can see that we're talking about families at like 20,000 and below income, that it'll be affordable for those. And then we have units at, I think, 40% income, 50%, and 60% in that project. The second phase, I think, will probably be 40 and 50%, 50 and 60% units. And not just because we like those numbers, but because of the funding sources we're going for. Those are the numbers that those funding sources require and that work under their funding systems. So 70% of our funds must go to either low-income neighborhoods. The census shows that the average median income is below these numbers, or to individuals that we can verify their income and say, yes, you're low income, you qualify. So that's where 70% of our funds must go. Then we can also do, there's 3 national objectives. That's the primary one. The secondary one is eliminating slum and blight effects. And the third is what's called urgent need. That doesn't mean that someone really, really, really needs something done. It means something that we could not have planned for when we did the planning process, like an earthquake, like a flood probably on a lot of people's mind right now. Those kinds of things, HUD calls those urgent needs. Those are the 3 national objectives, but within those, there's a myriad of types of activities. And in the past, the city has done single-family housing rehab for low-income families. Our microenterprise program that I mentioned a minute ago, business and entrepreneurial training for very low-income families. West Gateway Place, Phase 1, the infrastructure was costly because there used to be a stormwater pump station right in the middle of that property. And so it had to be moved off the property for us to build the complex. And so we did you can't use CDBG for new housing construction, that's not allowed, but we could do the infrastructure. So we redesigned that, and we did all the streets and sidewalks and the bus stop there. So those folks are going to have their own bus stop, and hopefully, and it's also set up for the streetcar, so hopefully there'll be a streetcar stopping there one day. So CDBG is a very flexible funding source, as Aaron mentioned. There's a whole list here in your staff report talking about different kinds of activities. Services are also allowed, but we're limited to only 15% of our funds for services. So right now we're using quite a bit of service money just because we were allowed to do more under our state grant than we're allowed federally. So our homeless coordinator is being paid. He works out of the police department, works directly with the police department and with our county social service agencies and nonprofits to help homeless folks get into programs and services and housing. We're paying for fair housing counseling. We're paying for preschool tuition for low-income students on the north side of town. So that money's going into services. We don't have that much now. Under the federal program, our services money is more limited, but it is a possibility. So what we are asking for this evening in the public hearing is comments on the direction to take for this year's CDBG-funded activities. within the context of all that. So, do you have any questions? Or did you want to do your questions after the public?
Well, I think we'll do questions after public.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Collis. Okay, we will now move on to the public comment portion of the public hearing. I have 5 requests to speak before the commission, so I'll continue. The first one I'm calling is Isaac Blackstock, representing the Housing Now Network. Welcome.
Hello, Commissioners. Can everyone hear me okay? Members of the public, thank you. I'm here, actually, Mark wanted to be here. He's the coordinator that Louise was speaking about. And he said, just make sure, I could be there because of family emergency, but make sure that you tell them up there that I couldn't do my job if it wasn't for Isaac and this little program that he runs, because it's really become the program that could and did and is doing more every single day. And we couldn't do it without the partnership that we have with your program. I have also just been recently appointed. I manage this program, and I've been appointed to represent District 1, which is here in West Sacramento, and also unincorporated Clarksburg by Supervisor Villegas for the Community Services Action Board. I'm really, really invested in West Sacramento. I've been doing housing here for about 7 years, and now I'm a resident here in West Sacramento. I'm a stats and data nerd, and so I've assembled a few fun facts since I have really limited time here, and I just wanted to give you a few bullet points about Housing Now Network. This is something that we've grown through in an innovation grant through MHSA funding, which is the Mental Health Services Act. In its first year, Housing Now Network was able to house 32 people. Many of these people were chronically homeless and mostly severely mentally ill, and that was exceeding its target goal of 30 housed in the first year, so that was great. Housing Now Network housed 49% of the original Bridge to Housing graduates. I know that people know a lot about Bridge to Housing. Since then, one of those consumers was rehoused after being incarcerated. 2 additional Bridge to Housing households were housed in collaboration with CommuniCare Health Centers because they had some members who were veterans and they were just having a really hard time. And what we've really become over the last 2.5 years is the program that can house, the really hard cases, and we just find that there's more and more people to house. In its second year, we were able to house a total of 52 people, which increased our numbers 72% over the first year. And I really want you to note that after 2 years of supporting those specific Bridge to Housing clients, we had no evictions in the first 2 years of our program. And I think that's really, really significant because you can place people into housing all you want, but if you can't retain that housing, you're kind of wasting a lot of money. If we have people who receive evictions, if we're not doing that prevention part of our program that's, really at our core, then that person really isn't housable after that, and it wastes a lot of money. So we really believe in that retention. In the first 6 months of its third year, which we're now in, Housing Now Network has broken its entire second-year totals
Mr.
by
Blacklock,
housing.
you're running out of time.
Okay, thanks. 56 people, and at this point, we're at 290% increase over our numbers for last year in those 6 months. We've just had our funding pulled, so that's why I'm here tonight to ask. I'm here to plant a seed. We're projected to house about 120 people this year. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstock. Okay, our next speaker would be Jania Luha. That I'm probably messing that up quite. You're with the Yolo County Children's Alliance. Can you pronounce your name for us, please?
It's Jenaba Lahai.
Jenaba Lahai. Okay, thank you. I didn't get the B.
Good evening, Commissioner. My name is Jenaba Lahai. I am the Health Programs Manager for the Yolo County Children's Alliance. I didn't plan on speaking this evening. I actually wanted one of my case manager, Erin, to speak. She will be coming up to speak as well regarding the services that she provides for our homeless families and, of course, all of the preventative work that she does with housing issues in West Sacramento. I coordinate and manage a family resource center in West Sacramento. We are across the street from Bright Park, so we are in the Bright and Broderick area. We serve mostly immigrant population, low income, English as a second language, and of course the homeless population. What we've been seeing lately, and one of the reasons why I'm here, is a rise in homelessness, especially with seniors and parents. There are no funding available actually for preventative work, meaning that when someone is facing eviction, there are no resources to triage those families into. So what they tend to do is they come to the Family Resource Center for assistance, and someone like our case manager is the one who walks with the family through the process of connecting them to services, if they're eligible for services, that is, with the county, as well as resources like Isaac. I just wanted to come and plead on behalf of the families that we work with to think about preventative services, utility assistance, rental assistance, and to also think about utilizing the Family Resource Center as a first stop to really work with those families in preventing homelessness. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Aaron McEwen. And so you said you're representing yourself, but are you also representing Yolo County Children's Alliance?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, so my name is Erin McEwen. I'm a case manager over there at the West Sacramento Family Resource Center. And I've been doing that for about 1.5 years now. And over that time, I've come across, surprisingly, what she was saying, a lot of homeless families, right? So it's usually a single parent with multiple children working a minimum wage job, which would make about $22,000 a year. And so to try and house a family like that, you're usually placing like 3 members per room. And under some restrictions, a lot of landlords don't allow that many people in a room. So usually those people are very vulnerable to, let's say, fraudulent landlords who can scam them and things like that. So I would like you all to think about, there are affordable units, which is great. Thank you, Raul and Katie, for making those available. But as I've seen, there are way more than 12 families that are needing services like that, and transitional housing programs where, let's say, a mom loses her job because she has been evicted. There are no places that would take that family while they transition into permanent supportive housing besides the county, and the county is doing a wonderful job with that. They actually have this, I don't know if you guys heard about it, the housing support allocation program, and so they have been taking those families and putting them up in hotels, but that's costing them a lot of money. So I'm also trying to think about this money maybe trying to rehabilitate some of those hotels downtown, which are not so good at this point, and making those into transitional housing units for those families and for those people, and then also trying to work on some permanent supportive housing for those families who are very low income, if not lower income, right? So that, and also, so we do work with a lot of youth, and we have a program with the River City High School, and they're called the Youth Promotoras. And this year they're working on homelessness, and actually last Saturday we went to Walmart and we solicited for donations. We got $150, and so they're really interested in working with the community and supporting these families who have kind of been lost. Like right now I have a single mom who has 5 kids living in a 1-bedroom. And so for me, seeing all the economic development, which is beautiful, we should also think about the families who are being, who are slipping through the cracks and do need a little bit more help to get back on their feet. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Next is Martha Mills, representing herself and also as a volunteer for the Yolo Food Bank.
Thank you so very much for this opportunity. My name is Martha Mills. I'm a homeowner and a resident in the Broderick area, specifically the Washington Historic District. I've been there for 15 years. I am also a former member of the Redevelopment Project Area Committee that was previously referenced. But I'm here today to speak as a West Sacramentan who is a volunteer for serving West Sacramentan, those in poverty and homeless and low income, through the auspices of the Yolo County, the Yolo Food Bank. But the Yolo Food Bank, as you may know, is based in Woodland and have developed presence in Davis, Esparto, and a lot of the other little towns that they are trying to serve. But they have a very minimal presence here in West Sacramento. Each week, a volunteer team provides perishable food items, that is milk, vegetables, fruit, and what we call grab and go, the stuff from the deli that didn't sell, that comes packaged to us, sandwiches and bread. We are up now to serving 90-plus people a week on Wednesdays. And we do that in a room, the conference facility of the YOLO Social Services. Our storage is basically limited to one box, so for supplies, et cetera. So I'm here to ask you to think outside the box and think of establishing or using your resources and connections to establish a West Sacramento food bank, which we could also use as a training site, as a warehouse site for the folks that would also be potentially serving the food distribution elements that we have here, businesses that we have here. But right now, because we're not permanent, there's a real limit to what we can do and how we can grow and who can we reach out to and how we can fundraise, because we are an offshoot of YOLO. So I plant that seed and I ask you to really think about that. I'll be very quick. And the next, sense of place is what I've come to learn is really important to the people who live in Broderick and the Washington area. They don't leave. They have traditions in their own cultures. So what I would ask is more funds for the rehabilitation of homes, especially for the elderly and those who have very minimal incomes. We used to have that. We haven't had as much of that of late. Also, I would really ask for us to think in terms of retail in the Broderick, Washington area. I recently heard that DNS wants to make condos on 3rd Street between the Sacramento Avenue and D Street. Condos are not going to create a sense of place for the people who already live there. We need a good grocery market there instead that sells fresh fruit and can be a distribution site. We need retail in that area. So I ask for your consideration and think of this as you explore the opportunities for this year and the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, request for public address to the commission is Frances Gracechild with Resources for Independent Living.
Yeah, I think it actually lifts out too.
It looks like it is.
Yeah.
It makes me smile when it goes down.
Yeah, it should work.
Might work.
Thank you so much, sir. My voice carries through concrete, so that won't be a problem.
Welcome.
First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and meet you. I'm Frances Gracechild. I am a resident of West Sacramento in Southport, a homeowner, 2547 Roaring Creek, and I live in a condo. You probably know the condo, Riva at the River. They have gloriously accessible bottom-story condos, so I'm very happy there. I haven't had a chance to come and address you, and I've been living in West Sacramento now for 7 years. But I work in Sacramento County at Resources for Independent Living as the executive director, and our job is to keep Sacramento County and Yolo County residents who wish to remain safely in their own homes outside of nursing homes and other congregate care facilities, and to have jobs. I've been a taxpayer since I was 16, so being a taxpayer, I'm now 71. So being a taxpayer is a good thing for us all to work on with poor people. What we'd like to do, and we provide services in Yolo County. Our first really work in Yolo County, as you know, most of the population was in Sacramento County. We were underfunded for years, as most social service agencies are. So we worked where the population was. So Sacramento got a lot of good years out of us. But guess what? Yolo, I believe West Sacramento, your mayor, did he say, I hope he was right on this. I hope this wasn't an alternative fact. He said it was the largest one of the largest growing cities in the United States. Does that sound right to any of you? Is it correct? This guy thinks he knows the answer.
I don't, actually. At one time per capita, it was.
Well,
and it's definitely the fastest growing in the region.
He looks like an honest young man to me. So I wrote it down in my notes as I was watching C-SPAN. So I have gotten to know it, some of the electeds here, but only through C-SPAN. So, but you will be seeing more of us because we are interested in extending the services we do provide in Yolo County through a CDBG starter grant. And we've received CDBG money in Sacramento County. We built a transitional living center out of a CDBG grant to buy property. We have helped hundreds and hundreds of people come out of nursing homes and move into their own apartments with the help of in-home supportive services workers. And my favorite one, the first one we ever did in 1985, we opened it. 1985 was Ruth Shelton at the age of 59 after living in state hospitals and then eventually in community nursing homes. At the age of 59, she had been living there since she was 10. We put her in her own apartment with her own home care worker. She became a community participant. She volunteered, became an artist. She had cerebral palsy. Some people perceived her as
Please wrap it up.
cognitively impaired. Yes. Did somebody say something?
You're out
Yes.
of time.
Okay, I'll wind it up. We want to do that for more people in Yolo County. Currently, we provide services on Tuesdays in Woodland at Department of Employment Social Services. We have a independent living specialist that's working there. I'm appointed by Don Saylor, your supervisor. I sit on the in-home supportive services advisory committee as their chair. And so we want to put housing and home care together and do more of it here in Yolo, where the population is rising quickly on this side of the river. And thank you again so much for the opportunity to just tell you a little bit about what we're doing. We'll come back when our time isn't up and tell you more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gracechild. Okay, our next speaker is Linda Charles. And she's representing herself.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you all so much for allowing me to speak today. My name is Linda Charles. I've been here at West Sacramento, my family. We live at 1285 Cold Springs Road in West Sacramento. We're originally from San Francisco, and I do work in Oakland. The reason why I wanted to talk with you all today is because I'm a real pro West Sacramento. I brag about this place all the time to people. And recently, and just last week, I've spoken to about 4 different people who are all over the place that are considering coming up to the Sacramento area to relocate, selling their homes, talking about that, and moving up this way. And I said, you gotta check West Sacramento out. Don't even bother with Sacramento. Come here. And so I'm kind of one of those persons that is out there selling West Sacramento because I think it is a great city, and I'm very proud of the mayor as well, and you all. First thing, and you're going to get that information to me on how I can share the good things about West Sacramento with these folks that I've spoken to recently, but the thing that I'm concerned about, that I wanted to bring up is that because of working in Oakland and the East Bay, there, a lot of people are economically being displaced. They're coming this way. And I mean, and you probably, you know better about this than I do. And my concern is that West Sacramento is ready, because there are, I mean, from what I'm hearing is that people are being pushed out of the Bay Area, and they're coming this way. And I don't know what the plans are for this, but I'm feeling like it's going to affect our town, and I hope in a positive way. And I mean, I look forward to seeing the diversity more so than ever. But I'm just putting this out here because I think, again, I think this is a great city, and I just hope that you all are, that's something that you are huddling over, because it is going to make a big difference. I've seen it in the last year. We've been here since 2005, and I've seen a difference, and you have, I'm sure, more than I have. So I'm just throwing this out here to you all because I'm here tonight. I mean, that's basically it, getting ready for the flood, because that's what's, I think, is going to happen with all the different people that are going to be coming this way.
Your time's up.
Okay, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other, I'm out of requests here, so formally. So at this point, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions of the staff or any comments? Yes, Commissioner Price.
I'd like to know from staff what the follow-up to this is. I mean, we've heard a lot this evening, a lot of different proposals, requests. I personally am sensitive to all of them. So my question to staff is there going to be maybe a workshop to talk about this stuff further, the different opportunities for the funds, what they've gone to in the past? I mean, to actually see how the monies were budgeted in the past, and how we can go forward and satisfy a number of different opportunities.
Yes, in your staff report, there's a calendar that shows
Oh, yes, I
the
did see
public
that.
meetings.
Right.
There will be more than that. HUD requires that we conduct at least 2 public hearings. We're going to actually do 3. We're going to do this public hearing today. Then we will be doing informal meetings with stakeholder groups like the Yolo County Homeless and Poverty Action Coalition. They act as a continuum of care for Yolo County, which basically means they oversee the HUD funding coming for homelessness and persons in poverty, but they also coordinate, like the food bank is a member of it's known as HPAC by its initials, Homeless and Poverty Action Coalition. So we're actually on their agenda for their meeting in February, and we'll be talking to a number of groups like that to get, a little more information in a less formal setting. Then we will do a draft annual action plan that will be brought back in this second public hearing to this commission towards the end of March, your March meeting. So you'll have a chance to look at the draft and make comments on that. The draft will also go to HUD because we need HUD's comments prior to a final document going to the city council, probably either the second meeting in April or the first meeting in May.
What percentage, again, is available for services? You say 10%?
15%. So it's about, 65,000 annually used for services. And like I said, right now, we're using it for 3 different types of public services. But because we were under the state program, we weren't limited to that percentage. So what we're doing now, we cannot do any longer. Next year will be more limited. That doesn't mean that the city, See, remember, this is a consolidated plan. We're consolidating all of our resources to try and get the biggest bang for our buck, to try and get the most impact where it's most needed, long-term impacts. So CDBG funds is not the only funding source for many of these activities, and sometimes it's not even the best funding source. Sometimes a lot of the HUD rules and regulations make it difficult to work with for some programs and so some projects. So we want to be strategic as to where the CDBG funds are placed. It doesn't mean that's the only funding source for a CDBG type or a CDBG eligible activity.
Right, but also it looks like a high priority, as you mentioned earlier, for example, goal 1 is to, reduce the incident and impact of homelessness. And a lot of these organizations sound like they work in that area. So is that 50% of that grant, is that what's available to organizations like these today?
Well, the 15, we need to look at our goals and what we want to do with the funds. So we could use up to 15%. We're not required to use anything for public services. But things like developing more permanent supportive housing, I think couple of your presenters mentioned permanent supportive housing. That's a HUD phrase, and basically what it means is affordable housing linked with services for persons with disabilities. So those may be physical disabilities, they may be mental disabilities, but the housing includes services usually on site. So there's, so we could, build the housing with CDBG. There's the food bank, those types of public services are allowed, but that's a public service, it's limited to 15%. If I'm doing the housing piece, I could use all of it if I wanted to, because that's not a public service, that's a capital project. So think of the public services as anything that's not a capital or an economic development activity is considered a public service. Youth services, homeless services, medical services are very limited under, because we're a small city. We get a pretty small slice of that CDBG pie from the federal level.
Okay, then just one more question for me. Where is our winter shelter? I noticed that in goal number 1, we handle winter shelter overhead costs. Is there a shelter nearby? Because I thought the only shelter was in Woodland.
That is the one we're talking about.
Okay.
So, and many years ago, it was in the 90s, I can't remember exactly when, the cities in Yolo County, Winters, West Sac, Woodland, and Davis, plus Yolo County, all got together and said, we need a homeless coordinator that helps all of our organizations that are dealing with homeless persons and persons in poverty to help them go for grants, to help them meet all requirements. If you've got a federal grant, whether it's HUD, whether it's Health and Human Services, whether it's Department of Labor that does a lot of job training stuff, they can be very, very intimidating and very difficult for a small nonprofit. And Yolo County was really small, and our nonprofits were really small. So we needed a coordinator to help our area do better in that area. So we all got together and started funding the homeless coordinator. It's a half-time county position, homeless coordinator. And then we also started putting money into, at that time, what was the only shelter in Yolo County, which was in Woodland. So, that has continued to today. So we're still funding, because there are a number of West Sacramento homeless that end up in the shelter in Woodland, because it is the only shelter in Yolo County. Well, no, that's not true. There's a rotating shelter in Davis now, which didn't exist back then. So Davis no longer funds the shelter in Woodland, but they still fund the homeless coordinator because they're funding their own rotating shelter, and Davis Community Meals has a few shelter units, like 10 or something. But no, there's no shelter in West Sacramento. Now, we had 12 units of transitional housing for homeless families. The organization that ran that lost their funding stream. HUD HUD doesn't really like transitional housing anymore. It's very difficult to get HUD funding for transitional housing. And you heard several people talk about how much it was needed. So I can't explain it, but that's HUD wants to see people go directly into permanent housing rather than having that transitional piece. And so they lost their funding. They have turned it into transitional housing for youth that are coming out of foster care or primarily. So I'd rather not discuss where that's located because some of these, for the privacy of these kids, but it's still being used for transitional housing, but for youth for ages 16 to 24.
Thank you.
Commissioner, other commissioners? Commissioner Campbell.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate staff on the development of this consolidated plan. That's a great deal of work that went behind that, I'm sure. Also want to thank all of those who came to present. It's, from my perspective as a commission member, it's very useful, beneficial, and makes the process work. So thank you also for the work you do. I want to ask just clarification. The consolidated plan must be coupled with an annual plan as well, right?
Correct.
Is in the staff report here that we have in the supplemental documentation, is the annual plan called out? Is it separated? Am I missing that?
This plan is done in an online HUD system. So the structure, we can't alter it. So for some reason, HUD
each of the
decided.
headings are the HUD nomenclature, right?
Exactly. And for some reason, HUD decided that the first year annual action plan would be a part of the document of the consolidated plan. So it just kind of, this is the way it prints out, and it just kind of runs one to the other. Let me see if I can real quick try and figure out where the annual action plan for this current year starts. I think it starts on, there's a little number at the lower right-hand corner, says 121. It starts out with the expected resources, and you'll see in the upper left-hand corner, it says AP. That means that's the annual plan. So it's AP 15, I think, is the first section.
I had divined that.
So you'll see on that annual plan that it says the expected annual allocation. So our first year's allocation was $429,460. And we anticipated that we would have $100,000 in program income. So that's returns from previous primarily loans. So we used to have a housing rehab program that was pretty active. So those are deferred loans. So we don't get a payment from people every month. But if they sell their house or if they refinance and take cash out, we get paid off. We also have first-time homebuyer loans. Same thing, they're deferred, but we never know. One day we just walk in and we'll find a $50,000 check on the desk. Well, not really on the desk, but so we anticipate 100,000. It could be more, it could be less. It's kind of it's hard to judge when you're not getting little monthly payments, but you just get big chunks. We've also done some business loans in the past. Now, those are actually monthly amortization on those, so we do get monthly payments, but very few left. Most of them are paid off. But you can see that we also, in the 5-year plan, we're guessing $2 million over the 5 years. And remember, this is a consolidated plan. Now, when I enter this into the annual action plan, because of the way the HUD system works, I'm only allowed to enter the CDBG money, but there are other resources for CDBG-type activities that the city can access. For example, Raul was talking about the grants we're going after for Casey and Grand to realign that street, to make that rail crossing safer, in order to, right now we've got 77 units of affordable housing under construction, almost ready to go. Hopefully another 60 will be created due to the realigning Casey. So those other types of grants, we look at those too. And we look at the consolidated plan when we're looking at where we're going with those.
Thank you. Other commissioners? I have I'd like to also echo Commissioner Campbell's thank yous for the public servants that have come before us tonight and the duties that you're rendering and services you're giving to our community. And also staff. I mean, this is a very ambitious undertaking, and we appreciate the opportunity to have that presented to us so we can offer input as well. A couple of things I'd like to mention. First of all, the idea of having a West Sacramento food bank, I think, is pretty exciting. I think that is something that should be really looked at. If we could kind of fire that up, Mr. Laurel, to hire, Planning Commission and City Council, that would be pretty exciting. Maybe get a committee on that. The other thing is how are these meetings announced? The 2 meetings that are coming forward. How's the word getting out to the public so we really have good public input?
We try and use multiple modes of communication. So, basically the HUD standard is you publish it in the local newspaper. So we put it in the newsletter at least 2 weeks in advance. There's a lot of people that don't read the public notice section of the newsletter every week. So in addition to, and it's in there in English and in Spanish. But we also put it on the city's website. So there was an announcement of this on the city's website. We put it in the highlights, which a lot of people receive, the city's email blast. We put it, we sent an email out to all the members of the HPAC, the Homeless and Poverty Action Coalition, which is probably, they have a certain number of people organizations that actually have membership, but then they also have a number of organizations that are just kind of partners with them. So probably 30 different agencies total that work with homeless and low-income persons. We sent it to the Brighton Broderick Community Action Network, the BBCAN, which works primarily a group of involved residents, primarily on the north side of the city, the lower income areas. So I think that's what we did. What we've been doing so far. Anyone that responds to that, if they ask for individual notifications, we will send out individual emails too. So we have a couple of people that have just asked over the years said, I'm interested in CDBG, so we make sure that they get all the emails.
You might also consider, because the Chamber of Commerce is partnered with the city, you might put it on a notice on their website.
Yes, that's a good thought. I didn't think about putting it on their website, but we will be talking to them during the process.
Okay, but that's an avenue as well. The other thing that kind of is heavy here is, there are a lot of needs in our community. And I think we need to be prepared to direct the resources and opportunities to everyone that comes forward in their particular bailiwick of service so they can achieve their success. So I think that's something to be thinking of from a global standpoint as an umbrella to our community to really so that the efforts and the concerns that are being presented to us and the work that's being done, it doesn't fall on deaf ears here. That we can help facilitate and guide and direct everyone to success. Are there any other? No, that's all I have. Yes, Mr. Kisson.
So for action tonight, you're simply looking for us to provide feedback on the goals that have been outlined, and then you're coming back to us in March. Is that what I understand?
Correct. HUD does not allow us to take any actions in the first public hearing because the idea is this is simply taking the opportunity to announce to the public that funds are available and collecting public input on the needs or public information on where those funds could be used. So we're not allowed to take action. The second public hearing in March, by that time we will have done our stakeholder meetings and done a lot of more, we have a city council's strategic planning will be done by then. We want to make sure that we're also fitting within the framework of what the city council wants to see. And we will be doing a draft annual action plan. So that will be the proposal, drafting, saying, here's the needs, here's all the community input, here's the notes from those community meetings, here's what we heard. And based on all that and our 5-year consolidated plan and all those other plans that Aaron had up there, we try and listen to everybody's needs, but also all those planning documents had incredible amounts of public input into those, many hours. So we don't want to pretend like that never happened. We want to make sure that all the listening we've done to date is also included, and then new information going forward.
So feedback, then I think that I'd like to provide based upon what we heard here tonight, and just thinking regionally, I see a lot of the goals that you've identified already are to address chronic homelessness and looking at homelessness as it comes through. We heard comments about the need for permanent supportive housing. I think that's a big need regionally, and if we could find ways to make sure that that's part of the plan. And also, I like the idea of looking at triage type uses, things that help folks that are on the verge of homelessness or potentially homeless to find ways to stay in the housing that they have, whether that's rental assistance or something else along those lines would be useful goals for us to have.
HUD has a term for that. HUD has a term for everything. They call it rapid rehousing. So basically that means keeping people in their house before they lose it, or immediately getting them into new housing so they don't fall into the cycle of homelessness. And the county, the Family Resource Center, who's here, they actually do a lot of that. They're invaluable in that area.
I know the city of Sacramento has put out some pretty ambitious goals in working with the county of Sacramento and surrounding jurisdictions, including Yolo County, to try and address homelessness. I mean, I think as we all can see with what happens at the river, homelessness doesn't know jurisdictional boundaries. I don't think a homeless person recognizes when they cross a line between one city or one county line or the next. So I think we need to really be thinking regionally in this context, and it sounds like we already are with what we're doing with one Yolo County coordinator, but if we can think of ways to look at this as a problem that we're facing as a region and how we can look for those regional solutions, I think that'd be useful. And I was a little surprised to hear that the only shelter is in Woodland, and that we're helping to fund it.
Some in Davis, don't forget, they do have some in Davis.
Do we have transit to take folks that need that shelter from West Sacramento to Woodland?
Generally, I believe they use a bus, which is, if they have to get back and forth every day, that's
Right. I'm just thinking
difficult.
if I'm homeless
But-
and I'm living here in West Sacramento, the shelter's just on the other side of the river, a lot easier for me to get to than the shelter in Woodland probably. But it's,
There's many issues with jurisdictional lines, which, from a homeless person's perspective, must seem absolutely, positively ridiculous, and from a reasonable person's perspective also. But for example, let's say they're living in a tent on our side of the river, or living in one of the motels temporarily on our side of the river. But they applied for benefits in Sacramento County. They have to go to Sacramento County to get any type of county benefit, so Social Security, disability, welfare, general assistance, all those kinds of federally funded programs, because they're signed up in Sacramento County. Then if they move to Yolo County, then they have to transfer all that over and start getting it from Yolo County. And so at the federal level, at least with HUD, they want us to work on a regional basis. They want CDBG and other funding sources to be on a regional basis, but they don't make it easy.
yeah.
Now, we're going to be doing our regional analysis of fair housing in Sacramento region. This is a new thing. We're going to be one of the first regions in the nation to do this. All CDBG recipient jurisdictions, CDBG entitlement jurisdictions, have to do this plan. We're going to do it on a regional basis. It's quite an undertaking. We expect it to take about 18 months. Lot of community input, lot of community meetings, a lot of data analysis, a lot of work that will be going into it. So maybe that's a start in that direction. I'm really kind of excited about that process.
It sounds very positive, and I thank you for the efforts. I'm sure it's not going to be an easy lift.
It took us 6 months just to work out with HUD how to even make it happen. Even though HUD was the one that told us, we'd like to see this, HUD put up so many rules and regulations that we literally couldn't, we absolutely just couldn't do it. And we had to work and work and work with HUD to come to to agreements on some things. It took 6 months just to negotiate this with HUD. And HUD's the one that wanted it in the first place, so we're getting there. It's always tough when you're the first one, though.
Anything else from the commissioners? Ms. Collins, thank you very much. So, Mr. Lauro, I think you have some good input from the commission.
Yes, thank you, and believe it or not, it is a good thing to be a federal entitlement jurisdiction in spite of all that. But yeah, this is the beginning of the annual action plan process. Like Louise said, we'll be back in March, and there's stops at other commissions and other public hearings along the way. So just a first step is tonight. So thank you for everyone for being here too. We usually don't have a crowd.
Thank you for the staff support here. Moving on to the next agenda item, we have requests for and comments from the commissioners. This is kind of a large time for us. Anything? Nope. I have a couple things. Commissioner Price, do you have?
I was just going to thank the presenters this evening. Thank you for the information. Again, from my perspective, it was heartfelt, and please come back again and follow the progress of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So I have a couple of things. First of all, I don't believe we've had a quarterly report from the Chamber of Commerce for a while.
Yeah, that's correct, and it's not the quarterly reports that are due to come to the commission. I believe it's a biannual, and we, as you know, they've just had a transition in staff leadership there. I meet with Verna regularly, and one of the recent topics we discussed was both the commission and the council doing an update to get caught up on their activities under the city chamber contract. So we'll make sure that I'll look at the regular schedule when they're supposed to happen, but as soon as the next meeting, I would anticipate Verna being here to do an update.
Okay. The other thing, could you give me an update on the progress for the accessibility to Whitey's Park there on Lake Washington Boulevard?
To the extent I know anything about it, what I do know is there's the new development, Newport Meadows, under construction. My understanding is there was a certain threshold of number of units that would, permits that were pulled in the overall Newport Meadows before that improvement was triggered. I can ask community development to look into that and report back to you, because that's definitely an issue that's within their purview.
Yeah, this has been an item on our agenda for quite some time.
Well, I know you've asked about it before, but it's not an economic development project, so I can check with the community development department to see what the latest on that project is. There's a development agreement that applies to the Newport Estates.
It'd be great to get
subdivision.
an update on how that's how that can move forward.
Yeah, I'll ask the appropriate people and get back to you on that.
Okay, great. And while you're at it, any other staff updates?
Sure. The only other update I wanted to give was you'll have a commissioner orientation on February 8th. If you haven't been contacted about it, put it on your calendars. It's 4 o'clock in the council chambers. I believe that's a Wednesday night. Yes. And a lot of you have been through it before, but it's kind of goes more detail of what I was talking about. And I believe there's a ethics training involved in that.
Yes.
Right.
And I'll be there for that meeting also. If you have any questions in the meantime, let me know. And then our next meeting will be in March.
Okay, do we have anything else from the commissioners? Nope. Okay. Anything more on the calendar of events?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Commissioner Kessling.
I'll second.
And
Campbell.
Commissioner Campbell seconds it. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.